Alrighty, so here we go with this proof. Again, just to refresh, generally speaking, how we're going to be proving that quadrilaterals are parallelograms is by saying that one pair of sides opposite each other are both parallel, that's the arrows, and congruent, okay? So that's going to be our goal here. Prove that one pair of sides is parallel and congruent. And if you watched the previous video, you know what we're going to do with these first two givens here. They don't have as a given here that TDVS is a quadrilateral. You can say that if you want. If they're not going to tell you that, you know, I'm not going to be a stickler about that. It's a quadrilateral. Okay, but we'll copy down our first given. I'll pause the video and then resume it. So there we go. I've written down our givens. Again, if you don't know why I put both of them on the same line, you can look to the previous video. But again, this is basically saying, hey, there's right angles in both of these triangles. You're getting congruent angles. The thing about this, though, is that we have two different triangles when we're talking about these perpendicular segments. We could be talking about this triangle and this triangle, or we could be talking about SCV and DGT. So I know that we work given by given, but you do want to kind of look ahead to see, okay, what two triangles am I going to be working with here? Because here's going to be the game plan, generally speaking. We get two triangles congruent, and we say that their parts are congruent, and that's how we get these parallelograms. So you want to look ahead. So the next given is SC and DG. That doesn't really help because that's both a part of this triangle and this triangle on both sides of it. So that one doesn't really help. But SV is congruent to DT. Now we know that we're going to be talking about this triangle. Let me draw it on here. This triangle and let me change the color here. We'll go with green. Save it. I'll do lines this time. And this triangle. Okay? So those are going to be the two triangles. Again, we know that. We're just kind of looking ahead. They tell us that SV and DT are going to be congruent. So we know that those are the triangles that we're going to be working with. Back to our first given. We've got SC is perpendicular to TV. DG is perpendicular to TV. You should be going to your theorem sheet and thinking about what theorem we're going to be putting here. I'll pause the video and resume. There we go. So I've copied down my given here, or my theorem, I should say. And what we have is perpendicular segments create congruent right angles. Again, we don't want to talk about these two, this one and this one. We want to talk about a right angle that in this triangle and a right angle in this triangle. So that right angle is SCV and DGT. Okay, and I'm going to write that down as my conclusion. There you have it. So we get those two angles congruent. We can go on to our next given, which is the SC line segment SE C is congruent to line segment DG. Cool. And we can mark that on our diagram as well. SC is congruent to DG. Cool. Thank you. Looks like a freebie. There's nothing we can really do with that. They're just telling us that those two sides of those triangles are congruent. So we're going to count that as a freebie. Sweet. Alrighty, next one is that SV is congruent to DT. Alrighty, so SV is congruent to DT. Cool. Remember, our two goals are opposite sides, parallel and congruent. We just got them to be congruent. So you may be tempted to say, since the opposite sides are congruent, we have parallelogram. Don't do that, okay? We still need to prove that they are parallel as well. So we're going to count this as a freebie as well. There's nothing that we can really do with that right now. There's no theorem that goes along with that. It's just this is congruent to this. And now we go on to step 4. So if we're looking at this, we see that we have 2 triangles and 3 parts congruent. We need to recognize that this is a right triangle because otherwise it'd be angle side side, and that spells a bad word. So this is going to be hypotenuse leg. Pause the video, see if you can picture what that would say, and then resume. So now that we've said that these triangles are congruent, all of their other pieces are unlocked, as it were. All of the other pieces we can now say are congruent. And the big thing that we're going to want to try to do is find those alternate interior angles so we can say that those opposite sides are parallel. So if we're looking at these triangles, our alternate interior angles would be right here and right here. Okay? Those 2 angles. If we say those 2 angles are congruent, which we now can because the triangles are congruent, then that means that these opposite sides are also parallel. So the theorem that goes along with this is the theorem that's right over here on the last page of your theorem sheet, which is that congruent triangles have congruent corresponding sides and angles. You're going to be making a lot of use of this theorem. I'll tell you that right now, folks. You're going to prove the triangle is congruent, and then you're going to say that the pieces are congruent in order to get these to be parallelograms. So our conclusion is that angle SVC is congruent to angle DTG. Cool. Now that those are congruent, step 5. Now that those are congruent, our theorem is going to be just like it was before. Congruent alternate interior angles create congruent create parallel lines. So our conclusion here, and if you're looking at this, we can see the Z shape. We know that we're trying to prove these 2 sides also parallel. So SV is going to be parallel to DT. Cool. So now we can draw on our diagram, show that yes, we have this as parallel. Sweet. Okay, so 6. Theorem, a quadrilateral with a pair of opposite sides, congruent and parallel, is a parallelogram. There you have it. And all you have to do is state that it is a parallelogram. So, I don't think they have parallelogram. TDVS is a parallelogram. And that's it. Okay? So again, just to run through here, we proved the triangle is congruent, we got the corresponding sides, and then corresponding angles, and then we said opposite sides are parallel and congruent, therefore we have a parallelogram. So if you have any questions, you should write them up, type them in an email, send it to me. I'll be happy to respond. But go back through the video if there's anything you were confused about. Pause the video, look through. But that's 10 minutes, so catch you on the flippy floppy. Let me know if you got questions.